I am Dr. Mary J. I am a chiropractor and a Pilates instructor at Pilates Plus Yoga here in St. Louis. Today I'm going to be taking you through a few exercises of the basic classical Pilates mat. It's great because you can do it anywhere, as long as you have a mat or a blanket. I'm going to utilize two 1-pound hand weights, but you can feel free to use soup cans or any other weighted object you have in your house. That would be just fine. So let's get started. And I will take you through a few fundamentals as well. So we'll do a few fundamentals and then some basic Pilates exercises. So we're going to go ahead and start in what's called neutral mat position. So neutral mat position is your feet are parallel. They are just about as wide as the bottom of your pelvis, so they're not outer hip distance apart and they're not completely together. They're just about what we call sitting bone distance apart. Your pelvis is in what's called neutral or a resting position. So that means there's a slight space under your low back for that curve, that lordosis of your low back. Your head and your upper back are heavy and resting into the mat. So we're going to start with what's called pelvic clock exercise. So I'm going to pretend that I have a marble in the middle of my navel, and I'm going to roll the marble toward my pubic bone, which is going to increase what's called my lumbar lordosis. So I'm arching my low back slightly more off the mat than when I started. So I'm going to inhale the marble to my pubic bone. And then I'm going to exhale. I'm going to roll the marble up to where my costal arc, my ribs come together, and the bottom of my sternum. And we're going to call that 6 o'clock. So we're going to imagine that 12 o'clock is the pubic bone. We're going to roll the marble to 12 o'clock. And then I'm going to exhale and roll the marble to 6 o'clock. And while I'm breathing in Pilates, I'm expanding my pelvis 360 degrees, so I'm breathing front, side, and back in my pelvis. I'm also breathing in the front and the sides and the back of my rib cage. So I'm really trying to expand the torso with my breathing. In through the nose and out through an open jaw. Inhaling to 12 and exhaling to 6. Good. Now I'm going to balance the marble right in the middle, and I'm going to go from 3 o'clock. So we're going to rotate the pelvis, and then I'm going to go all the way across to 9 o'clock. So it's a tilting of one side and a lifting of the other. Inhale over to one side, exhale to the other. And I usually do about 4 in each direction. Good. And then we're going to roll the marble around the face of the clock. So I'm going to start by arching or going into that anterior pelvic tilt. I'm going to roll the marble over to my right hip, up to where my rib arc, and over to my left hip, and then back down to my pubic bone. So I'm trying not to move my knees too much. They'll move a little bit, but I'm definitely not doing that. I'm trying to get mobility in my pelvis and my low back. And it can be pretty small and subtle, or it can be a little bit bigger, depending on your mobility level. I'm inhaling to start the clock and exhaling to complete it. Good. Second fundamental we're going to talk about is the actual breathing. So I'm going to put one hand on my lower abdominals and one hand above my navel on the upper part. And I'm just going to practice breathing into both hands. So allowing my abdominal muscles to expand under my breath. And in Pilates, we inhale through the nose And exhale through an open jaw. And then I'm going to take my hands to the sides of my rib cage and I'm going to attempt to expand my breath into my ribs sideways. And when I exhale, my ribs move back toward my spine or my midline. Good. The next fundamental that we're going to do is called a shoulder blade mobilization. So I'm going to take my arms up to the ceiling. I like my palms to face. In fact, I'm going to grab my weights for this one, my hand weights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach the weights, my arms, up to the ceiling, and that's going to pull my shoulder blades out and around. So I'm trying to pull my shoulder blades off the mat and around my rib cage in what's called protraction. And then I'm going to draw my shoulder blades back down and slightly toward my spine in what's called retraction. So wrapping my shoulder blades around the weights, my arms are going to lift up toward the ceiling a little bit, pull my shoulder blades down, and squeeze them a little bit toward my spine. Good. So that's protraction and retraction. The next fundamental we're going to do is called hip folds. My goal is to stabilize my pelvis and my torso, the box of my torso, while I lift one leg. It looks like this. And again, I'm using what's called increasing intra-abdominal pressure. So I'm breathing, I consider it 360 degrees around my torso to increase the pressure so that I stabilize. So I inhale and lift, and I exhale. And as I exhale, I can engage the abdominals just a little bit in a drawing in motion. Then I can go, it's 4-point hip folds, so I can challenge myself a little bit more. Inhale to lift one, exhale to float the other. Inhale, replace the first one that you lifted. Exhale, replace the other. And my goal is to prevent that from happening, to prevent that from happening, to prevent an arch in my low back. So I want to maintain that stillness in my pelvis. Inhale, lift one knee to tabletop. Exhale the other. Inhale, replace one. And exhale the other. Okay, the last fundamental that we're going to do before we start, just a few of the basic mat exercises. We're going to do upper body, lower body sequential curling off the mat. So make sure that you draw your chin into your throat for a little chin tuck. And then I'm going to inhale to curl. This is essentially what we're going to be doing in hundreds position. And then I'm going to exhale to roll back down. I'm going to start at the bottom of my spine this time. I'm going to tilt my tailbone and start to roll through my sacrum and my low back, inhaling to lift. Just a small bridging, exhaling to roll down. And then I'm going to alternate chin tuck, inhale, curl the upper body. Exhale, rolling down. Tailbone tip, inhale to roll into my lower body curl. Exhale and rolling down. Last time, chin tuck, inhale, curl. My arms float a little off the mat. Exhale, rolling down. And last, lower body. Good, now we're ready to go into our hundreds position. So I'm going to progress you through the most basic to a little bit more advanced hundreds. So the most basic, we're going to start with our legs together on the mat. I'm going to do my chin tuck. I'm going to inhale,
curl my head and shoulder blades off the mat. Notice that I don't necessarily need to go into a posterior tilt. I try to keep a little bit of a heaviness in my sacrum, and I can start pumping. And in Pilates, you're gonna pump for 5 on the inhale, and then 5 on the exhale. I can also use my hand weights. Then I'm going to progress it by lifting one leg to tabletop and lifting the other leg to tabletop. And then my last progression for hundreds is going to be extending my legs. And again, my whole torso is pretty stable here. And then go ahead and release the weights, bend the knees, and roll down. Gently lower one leg and then the other. You're gonna walk your feet a little bit further away from your pelvis. Grab your weights again. We're gonna go into the roll-up exercise. So this is a sequential spine rolling. So I'm gonna inhale to start. Exhale to roll. Inhale to begin rolling down. And exhale to complete. To challenge myself, I can take my legs further out and I can reach my arms more into flexion. It's a spinal sequencing exercise. So I'm trying to pick up one bone at a time and lay down one bone at a time. One more. And it's essentially a U-shaped position. Good. Next, I'm going to go into my single leg circles. So you're going to hug one knee into your chest. The opposite leg can stay bent in that roll-up position, or you can stretch it out for an elongation through the front of the hip. We're going to pull the knee into the chest a few times, releasing in the front of the hip. I like to do some circles here and reverse my circles. Then you're going to slip your hands behind your hamstring. You don't have to be close to your knee. You can be right in the middle of your hamstring. Your leg bone, your femur, is going to 90 degrees at your hip, and you're going to stretch your shin bone up into leg extension. Flex the foot, point and exhale, hamstring curl to bend. So it's inhale, flex, point, exhale, bend. Inhale, stretch, flex, point, and bend. This time we're going to keep the leg there and do our circles, ankle circles, mobilizing the ankle joint and the foot bones. And exhale, reverse. Good, then you soft point. I take my arms down beside. My goal is to stabilize in basic. So I'm going to keep my pelvis pretty still and I'm going to do small circles. I'm using my breath and my abdominals. I'm going to do 4 in each direction. Now I'm going to reverse. Increasing my intra-abdominal pressure, stabilizing my torso. And then a little bit of a drawing in maneuver. And then hug that knee in. Draw the opposite leg in, stretch that leg. And again, you can modify by bending the knee. I'm going to straighten it because it's a stretch for the front. Let's do some little hip mobilizations. I like to do some circles here. You can reverse. Slip the hands behind the hamstring. Take the leg to 90. Stretch, flex, point, and bend. Your goal is to use this distal quad muscle to really actively elongate the hamstrings at the knee joint. And last one, let's do our ankle circles. and reverse. And then the arms come down the side. The leg that's on the mat is also helping to stabilize. And then I'm going to do my crossover circles. I'm going to do 4 in each direction and then reverse. The bigger the circles are, the more you have to use your core and your breath to stabilize. And then go ahead and hug that knee in. Now to transition from lying down on your back to our next exercise, rolling like a ball, we're going to do a chin tuck, and we're going to use the back of our hip muscle and our arm muscles and our shoulder muscles here to roll up to sitting, just like that. Make sure you have plenty of room behind you on the mat for rolling like a ball. The inner edges of the feet are touching, they're pressed together, and I can either grasp gently behind my hamstrings here, or I can grasp the top of my shin bones here. So I'm going to go ahead and be here. You're going to slightly tilt the sacrum, the spine is round, and we're going to lift the feet and find the balance first. Now my goal is, can I keep my spine in this rounded shape so that I can roll like a ball forward and back and find my balance? So I'm never going to roll to my head or my neck. It's just to the top of my thoracic spine. And the distance between my knees and my shoulders doesn't change. So I'm going to roll back and find my balance. Roll back. Good. Now if you don't round your spine, typically what's going to happen is this. And you're going to end up stuck on your back. And you're going to have to figure out how do I get up now? So the key is maintaining your lifted C curve and keeping it as you roll. And one more. Good. Find your balance here and then replace the feet. The last exercise we're going to do as part of a basic mat work is we are going to go into the swan exercise, so extension. So you're going to sweep your legs behind you. Make sure you're in the middle of the mat. The hands come on the mat pretty much underneath the armpits. We're not going to be out here, and we're not going to have our forearms down. So in Pilates, the forearms are lifted and the upper arm is parallel to the body. My legs are together. I'm going to actively press my legs down and actively engage my inner thighs and my seat muscles. And then I imagine that I'm watching a ladybug as she walks away from my nose. And then I follow her all the way back to my nose. So your goal is, again, sequential spinal lengthening. It's not all pushing with the arms. There's equal work with the back muscles and a little bit pushing with the arms. So I feel my triceps here. One more. And exhale, rolling down. From the swan exercise, I'm going to lift up, and I'm going to come into my resting mat pose, child's pose position, just for a moment. Then I'm going to come forward into my last exercise, which is a kneeling plank. So I like to tuck my toes under. It's getting me ready for my normal plank, but here I can have a shorter lever. I can maintain the stability of my torso. So again, watch that the chin doesn't jut forward. The head should really be in line with the back of the body. And then I can add some tricep push-ups. Or I can just hold my kneeling plank and then point and come back into the neutral mat pose again. One more time, come forward into your kneeling plank. You can either hold the plank or perform your Pilates push-ups. And settle back. You can sweep your hands to your feet and roll your spine up.
And that's just a little taste of basic Pilates mat at Pilates Plus Yoga.